Hello and welcome to the Geeky Brummy podcast. Joining me today, as usual, Mr. Keith Bloomfield.
Hi, everyone.
Miss Lee Price.
Hello.
Mr. Sam Edwards.
Hello.
And special guest, Mr. Paul Lacey. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Guinness World Record holding Paul Lacey.
That's right. Yeah.
We shall talk about that soon.
We can do. Yeah.
But coming up today, we'll be talking all about the future of AI and website design with Paul. We'll be reviewing Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the latest in our Poundshop Cosplay featurette. The King of Cosplay will return to announce the nearest theme, and of course One Geek Thing, but we'll join you shortly. So, hello Paul, welcome to Geeky Brummy. We've had you behind the scenes for quite a little while, helping out with our moving our website host. But you describe yourself as a WordPress expert, designer, speaker, podcaster, and Guinness World Record holder.
Yeah, indeed, and a human as well, just to confirm.
Just confirm you're not sentient.
No, well, who knows? Who knows? We might all be.
Cool. So, let's start off with the big one. Guinness World Record holder. Do you want
Right.
to explain why?
Well, I mean, I don't like to talk about it too much. I mean, it's academic, sports related. So, we could leave it at that if we wanted, or
Yeah.
no. But the truth is, no. The actual truth is, I used to have a client, because I've been a web designer and stuff for years. I used to have a client, and it was Loughborough University, specifically the sport part of Loughborough University, which kind of looked after all of the different student teams, which went from anything from kind of like casual sport up to full-on professionals. A lot of the Olympians come out of that university or train at that university. So there you are, sport, academia. But what actually happened was I was asked to come along to a meeting, but to bring my Christmas jumper. So I was just like, fine, yeah, I'll do that. So I did. I brought my Christmas jumper. And then we all went into the outside area, thousands of us, and we tried to break the record for being the most people in the same place at one time or wearing a Christmas jumper. On the same day, Dublin were trying to break it as well. And apparently they had bigger numbers, but they failed on some kind of technicality. Ooh. So I don't know what it was, but we found out we won, and I got the certificate and everything. So
I just have this image in my head now of like two armies of Christmas jumpers just going.
Oh, yeah.
Like the winner takes the certificate.
There was some strict rules. You couldn't have, for instance, just like a sort of Scandinavian skiing icon. It needed to have like a reindeer or a Father Christmas or something that was definitely
Christmas,
pure Christmas.
Like Star Wars, Darth Vader.
Yeah, you could if it had if it was one of the Star Wars themed Christmas ones, but just a general Scandinavian style that you might wear at that time of year if you didn't want it. That wouldn't count, and you wouldn't get counted for that.
That's crazy.
I kind of see how they would do it. It's like if you're going to do Guinness Book of Records, it's got to be the jumpers that I wouldn't wear.
Yep.
So
exactly.
It's full on bells. I don't know if anybody ever sees Jimmy Fallon. In the 12 shows before Christmas, he has the most horrendous Christmas jumpers you've ever seen, like frills, bells. Like, they're outrageous. It's like I would never wear one, but. I can imagine that's what they did in Ireland. It's like, that's not Christmassy enough.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Yeah,
they were a little bit too loose on the definition of the Christmas jumpers, I think, as far as I know. But also the whole counting process was really strict. You had to go in lines through this thing and sign your name and all this kind of stuff.
Back and start the line with a different Christmas
exactly.
jumper.
Yeah, you couldn't know. They were stopping people from being able to do that. Absolutely. And the good thing is, thanks to COVID, it's not looking like it's going to get broken anytime soon. So could be a lifelong Guinness World Record holder.
I love that you won because you had more Christmas spirit than it feels like the plot of a Christmas movie.
Exactly. Oh, it is a great thing, and you do have to buy your own certificate. They don't give it. I mean, maybe Usain Bolt gets one for free or something. I'm not sure. But at this level of world record, you had to send off and pay £15 for the certificate, which I framed, and it was in my name.
I mean, that's in the office for eternity.
Absolutely.
It's just a shame you didn't get presented it by like Roy Castle and Norris McWhirter, really.
Yeah, I mean, I'm waiting for the call up, but we'll see. you know.
But now Sam's mentioned it, I'm kind of thinking there's a gap in the market here. There's a Hallmark channel. This is a Christmas movie. This is not the Snow Globe Festival that usually some New Yorker who's like, you know, given up their banking career to go back to their hometown.
And here's the twist. There's a romance between someone on each team. Then it's a real Hallmark.
The organisers. Yeah.
and the poster is them split back to back.
Yeah.
Red is over here, green is in Ireland. Oh, this we're doing it.
You know what the finale is going to be? The two events join together and they all celebrate together.
Of course, yeah. And break another world record jointly.
Yeah, this is it. Right.
I know this is a complete segue, but I always think there is a gap in the market for a Hallmark channel for geeks.
Yeah.
Because 90% of the actors and actresses in the Hallmark movies are usually people who've been in like Babylon 5 or Chuck or people like that.
I know I've seen one with Melissa Joan Hart.
Yeah, so like get these people.
I haven't seen it, I know of it.
Make geeky Hallmark movies.
Yeah.
Space Station for Christmas, something like that. I mean,
There is a generation that just doesn't grow up though, and it's basically us. There's the Gen Zs, and they are younger than us, yet they already look grown up by 17. And we just refuse. And there's something about, I think, the time that we were growing up, perhaps, that
yeah, definitely.
It's
keeps
definitely
the magic
About
about.
the 90s. Yeah.
It's definitely something I find when I go to like something like Nostalgia and Comics Worlds Apart, and you're standing in a queue with a toy, and you kind of like there's another
And there's 3
30 or 40-year-old person behind you, and then some 7-year-old in the queue, and you're all like, yeah,
Good choice.
yeah, nice. So, yeah.
But, so moving away from Hallmark Christmas movies and Christmas jumpers. So you used to host your own podcast all about WordPress.
I was co-host actually. Yeah.
Co-host,
Yeah.
yeah. And then you used to do a lot of work with WordPress. So coming on to website design,
Yeah.
it's kind of really accelerated over the last couple of years. I mean, you've got Wix, you've got WordPress.
Yeah.
So where if you were starting a website today, where do you think was the best place to go?
All right. And well, there's like the techie aspect of like what tools should I use, and then there's like what should I actually do. And I mean, my advice would always be to get all your ducks in order first. So and keep things as simple as possible. So figure out who your audience for your website is, and before you do that, you've got to figure out like why you've even got a website. Like, what's the point? Have I got a product to sell, or am I trying to get some information shared in some way? Once you figure out like what you've got, then establish who your audiences are, and then try and figure out like what is if this is my product or service, and this is who I'm talking to, then what do I need to say that is something they want to hear rather than what I want to say? And that's where you get things like unique value propositions, that kind of stuff coming in, where if you kind of figure out those sort of things first, and your messaging, figure out what your audience's pain is, how can you agitate that a little bit if you're trying to sell something. So for instance, if it was some kind of skin cream or something like that, you would start with a unique value proposition that defined that you are the solution to the problem. And the problem isn't the skin problem. The problem is what comes off that, which would be lack of confidence, doesn't want to do this. So I think it was a famous marketer, someone Levitt, I think it was called, who said people don't want a 1/4-inch drill, they want a 1/4-inch hole. So you got to reverse it to think what it is that you're.
What's the need?
Yeah, what does your audience want to hear? If you can get your messaging right and figure out that whole, what's their pain, what agitates them, and what is your solution that clearly answers that. Get yourself some testimonials. This is again more of a product service type scenario, but essentially, how can you hook into putting your end user at the center of everything? Get that done first. Get a piece of paper. Sketch out a 1-page website, and you should be able to, in a way, on a lot of situations, have just a 1-page website that explains the gumph as such. Then, obviously, if you've got a podcast, you need a podcast section with all the art, But in terms of kind of like a homepage, get that sorted. Figure out what your messaging is, and in a way, you've then got your own kind of mental design system in your mind. So everything else you do on the website thereafter goes back to, well, the whole purpose of this website is this, and the purpose someone would come here is this. So anything that you do, any decisions you make, need to kind of check that they work for you and they work for your audience. Otherwise, there's no point doing it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I would do that as an exercise first, rather than what most people do, and everyone is guilty. I'm guilty of it all the time, which is go and copy someone else. Think, oh, I think that's roughly what I want to do. I'll just copy that.
And that's exactly the way I was going to go on to with the whole website building and AI, because you have tools such as Wix and WordPress, which are very much customizable, but they are blocks, and they are choose which blocks you want, choose which theme you want.
That's right.
And they're very kind of, some are very identical websites, especially in the basic themes. I mean, WordPress do a wide range of good basic themes, but they're very much identical, and it doesn't matter if you're a podcast or a sales company or anything, it'll be a very kind of similar map at the top, articles down the side.
Yeah.
Do you think we're going to get this whole host of with tools such as Bard, GPT-4, GPT-3, ChatGPT, which is like the open free version of GPT-3? Do you think a lot of content and copy is going to start coming from AI feeds, and like they'll just dump it into a WordPress template? Is that?
Yeah. I mean, already WordPress has tools and plugins built into it, so you don't have to even go outside of WordPress to get the stuff in there. A friend of mine has a plugin called Bertha, which I always think of the animated Bertha show from the 80s. Bertha, lovely Bertha. That one. And essentially it's hooking into GPT. Well, last time I remember it was GPT-3, but I imagine he might have switched it to 4 now, perhaps, I'm not sure. And so you can just build content straight into your WordPress build, which... But yeah, I think the whole AI and WordPress and websites. I mean, just briefly go back to your question, as in tools like Wix, Squarespace, WordPress, that sort of thing. WordPress is my favorite tool. I've been working with it for 15 years or so, and I can't do anything with it, but I can, whatever my knowledge and skill potential is. WordPress meets me at that point, and there's obviously things that I can't do because I just simply don't have the skills, but it doesn't tend to stop me from moving forward. However, it does have a very steep learning curve to get things right. It is way easier to get everything wrong with WordPress than it is with something like Wix or Squarespace, because their whole business, it's a business model in that case. Their business model is we don't want to churn end users. We want people to come in, and we'll do some dirty tricks to try and force them to stay, but equally we want them to have a good time and recommend. So I think anyone who's starting out with a website, get your messaging right, and then start with something like Wix perhaps, and create your first version of the website that is something that you're happy, it's my first version, finish it, it's all good. Maybe I can build version 2 immediately after, now that I feel confident that I've figured out roughly. I think the big challenge people have is trying to do everything at once, and they get completely overwhelmed. And I get that because I do that too, and I've been doing this for a long, long time. But yeah, in terms of AI and websites, you'll notice I do this. I'll go off on all sorts of tangents, but
sounds like you.
I mean, but the key thing I think about AI, it does affect everything. It does affect websites. But at the end of the day, we can only really predict the next short period of time, while we're using this kind of narrow sort of AI. So for people who don't know, there's narrow AI, which is getting tools to work within kind of a fixed set of parameters. And then, they're kind of like assistants, such as ChatGPT, GPT-3, those kind of things. Bard and the one that Microsoft have got. Then you've got general AI, which is the sentient being, type thing, which is the one that we're all kind of worried about as such.
The Cortana. Those kind of things.
So to me, we are looking at things like web design and anything else, whether it's copywriting, photography, video creation, all falls into the same boat in my mind, which is we're all going to be using narrow AI, thinking we've beat the system, creating websites better than we've ever done before, creating photography better than we've ever done before, and then general AI will come in and screw it all up because we'll realize that everything that, nobody needs a website anymore. Nobody needs photography anymore, because I saw just the other day you can hire AI models now for your brand photography. So if you've got a clothing brand or something like that, you don't need people anymore or a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
You can have that done and it's completely real. And when you know, as much as creatives, we don't want to do that, the people with the money and the spreadsheets will do that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And this is my big concern is AI-driven content, because at the end of the day, the root of any AI is it's been trained, it's been learned off
Yep.
something, and that's somebody else's copyright content.
Yep, absolutely.
And progression. So I know kind of one of the big ones, I think it was Midjourney, I can't remember which one exactly it was. When it first came out, there was very much every single image it generated a Getty Images logo on the bottom, because they basically just web scraped the entire Getty Images website, and it's kind of like they assumed that's what appears in a picture, so that naturally was just appearing in their like model. And that's my big concern. I mean, for content creators such as ourselves, you can probably AI podcast is probably on the way there. Go and give me 20 discussion points about the latest film release.
Absolutely. The problem with AI and podcasting is that you can generate a whole podcast from a mixed number of different voices, plus add in an AI voice that pulls the whole thing together and gives its own opinion. And the worst part about that as well is that you can also say, hey, the narrative I want to kind of get across here is this. So you can even have Trump saying things that make no sense for Trump to say, because you can take the whole podcast completely out of context. So you can just say, right, create me 30 minutes of audio, and the general message I want is to be this. I would also like to, you know, really kind of be a slap into the face to these people over here. So make sure they're part of it, pushing the agenda they're completely against. And you can do it.
And
you can do it, and that's the frightening thing.
Deepfaking is a big problem at the moment, especially in the adult industry, where deepfaking is taking celebrities and put them on faces where they don't want to be seen.
The porn industry is always one of the first. Porn, religion, and media is always the
it's a big pusher of new technologies.
Whether it's live streaming, membership sites, that kind of stuff. If you see the porn industry doing something, it normally means that
mainstream is going to be on top of it.
What they really comes out the back end of them ends up with us in our mainstream stuff. I mean, if there was one piece of advice I'd give to anybody, aware of all this AI stuff, it's, I know this is not necessarily about websites, but start kind of thinking to yourself, what does it mean to be human now? What does it mean to have relationships with real people? And if there's anything that you can do to almost future-proof ourselves as creatives in this industry, it is to build human networks and build good relationships with people, where there's a good sense of authenticity to move forward. Because as much as the tools right now are very exciting, I'm using some of them. They're writing better code than I can write for me. They're writing better content than a typical blog content writer might. Well, they're writing it faster, and much faster. And they will cost and are costing hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of jobs. There's no doubt about it. If you're in a day job...
I will push back on the whole thing that it's writing better content, because I disagree.
Yeah, I push back on myself a little bit, to be honest. Faster. I say faster,
Because, like, I mean, like, in my job, we've actually banned anything AI generated. And...
At the company level?
It's like our editor, my editor, like put up a thing this week basically saying like we will not allow anything AI generated. And a big part of it is because we're a gaming website. One of the big things is pushing like enthusiasm about the games that we're playing and that sort of thing. Because like, I mean, recently written a guide for a game that's come out and talking about the character in particular and sort of relating the experiences I've had playing
as a
the
human.
games.
What it's like to, which is same thing with education. So in the education system, all the students are cheating right now. So
I've seen the thing go around this week.
If you're a student and you're studying and you're not doing that, then you are at a disadvantage potentially. However, the big problem is that you're also at the same time you're not learning and you're destroying the whole purpose of having an education, having a degree, having a diploma. What's the point if everyone can get them? There's no. So this is what I'm sort of saying about we've got to be super careful that we don't destroy all the things that are valuable.
Yeah, because the particular example I saw this week of like an essay that had clearly been AI generated, and they found it out because like the fourth paragraph in says as an AI language model. I can't.
Oh no.
It's obviously like the lecturer marking it just like failed it instantly.
Well, at least the lecturer was humanly marking it, because that is the next thing. Is that
the whole problem with it is that
it.
they were basically saying like, what is your opinion on this? You know, to sort of show that you understand what's going on. But it's not your opinion if you're going to a computer and saying, give me an opinion.
It's not. It's cheating and it's pointless. And
But I think there's a kind of advantage, hopefully, with kind of millennials and Gen Z, is recognising digitally built content and AI-driven content, and critical thinking is going to be one of the key skills going forward in the future of, is this a human or is this an AI bot that's been trained to do something in particular? It's kind of weird because if we think about the like utopian fiction of the 60s and 70s and moving into the 80s about how AI was going to solve our problems, it was going to simplify our lives and allow people to be creative and go and do art and go and paint and go and
like
music.
in Star Trek planets that they find sometimes. Where,
but AI has been completely flipped around to the creatives are the one who are getting the impact now because everything's on the internet, I'll just scrape it for free, and then the creative work doesn't need to exist anymore because the internet.
We're getting pushed for our jobs in creative.
Yeah.
But if it does go the way that it could be predicted, we could just do creative for fun all the time and not have to worry about it's part of how we pay our bills. You know what I mean? So we can make films for fun rather than kind of get fired from a job and move to another studio sort of thing.
I mean, my kind of hang up on the AI stuff is that why it's being pursued by a lot of big companies is to save money and maximise profits. Why pay an artist to create something unique when you can just get an AI to create something for next to nothing?
There's already enough problems with people paying artists and writers as it is.
And it's one of the big things about being a creative. It's like, I was never a big fan of the whole Fiverr idea, and I've seen that being advertised, pushed now as a company exec going, I can start a company and have a website and have all the photography and done through some people I've exploited through Fiverr. And I can understand how some people are trying to like, I need to make a bit of money, I can do this through Fiverr. But the whole idea of every industry, Amazon, the BBC, just doing everything because we don't need to hire talented people. We don't need to hire a Peter Jackson. We don't need to hear a Steven Spielberg. We can just create a fake version of that because it costs us nothing. I think that's a danger in itself. That whole idea is that we can wipe that out. I mean, is there going to be
script tools that they're being used?
Well, I mean, we've already got what seems to be an AI-generated prime minister.
Yeah.
So is there a way?
I think like he is like one of the first like.
He's on GPT-1 model. Yeah, he's on a very low limited model.
He's vaguely convincing as a human, but I don't think he's quite there yet.
I think Forrest was definitely a beta test.
Type it in now. Wave to the audience.
Yeah. It's the video where he was talking about like football or something. He was like trying to cheer on some team, and it was like the most robotic thing I've ever seen. This is fluff. This is the easiest thing a politician can do, and you're still just rigid.
I think my favourite one was when he was working at a soup kitchen in London, and this guy was like coming to get his soup, and it's like, what's your job? And he goes, well, I'm at a soup kitchen, I'm not working. It's like, have you considered a career in finance? No, I'm at a soup kitchen, I'm homeless and getting food. It was just like the complete and utter disconnect. And going back to your thing about human connection, and it's weird that again, a big flaw I think with AI, from a D&I point of view, is it's horrible because it's a web scrape. Most of the internet is unfortunately written in English. So therefore, all the big language modules are English driven.
Absolutely, that's true.
So if you're speaking any kind of Japanese, Chinese things, there'll be different language models for them.
Also, the European languages are not particularly well
European languages, instant disadvantage if English is not your natural speaking language. So you're already behind the curve by 5-10 years because that's what GPT, OpenAI, and etc. have been training on for so long. So now you're going to have another first world on top of the first world of we have these digital AI-driven businesses, which will then outcompete human-driven businesses because you can't react as fast. And then you'll have the next tier down of people who don't have access to these kind of tools, and they're blocked from it, mainly from language or can't type or those kind of things, those restrictions. It's kind of weird because this whole Bard got updated this week.
It did.
And now it's got
Very up to date now.
direct internet search. So the AI tool will search the internet for you. So you can put in something like, I want to go on holiday to Kenya, give me the top 3 things to do. And it will go through and it'll tell you them, and it'll give you booking links, and it can say, I can sort this out for you and build you an itinerary.
It created for me an itinerary for this podcast today. I checked it this morning. However, Bard seemed to be out of date because it was talking about the Obi-Wan, the Kenobi.
Yeah.
So unless I missed that there's a new trailer come out for season 2.
To be fair, I've seen people like generating games release lists, and it was like for like the rest of the year, like what are games coming out this year, and it was like I'm trying to think what it said. I think I had like God of War Ragnarok comes out in August. It's like it came out last year.
It found a source that was talking in the present sense and thought that was now. Yeah.
That's one of the big problems with, I think, GPT-4 is it stops mid-2021. So the world is completely different now to that. We're 2 further years down the line. We're out of the
It's a small problem for them to solve.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing.
What I've seen a lot is the people using them as search engines, and yet all the stuff coming back is all made up.
Yeah.
It isn't actual. It isn't.
And it convinces you that it's right as well. So unless you're critical enough to go and check those facts and check those figures.
Or I would recommend that people just do normal
Research.
searches.
Yeah, I mean, I tried it a couple of weeks back to just see what it would write about one of the books that were the comic books that I'd chosen, and said like,
you
right.
found out your comic pull list.
No. But I put in and said like, write me a review of this particular comic. It hadn't come out because it was the following week, and then most of it was it had just pulled the synopsis from around the internet, but had completely credited all the wrong creators. Mostly because a lot of the websites, the preview websites, don't list anybody outside maybe the main writer and the main artist, and they just made up loads of other stuff. And I was like, I know that's not true.
A lot of the models are really just like predictions. They're just like studying how language works, and they're kind of just putting something together that sounds right. Sounds convincing,
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think about the future is maybe augmented intelligence rather than artificial intelligence. You still need a human to pilot, but using digital tools
I think
in an effective way.
This is where I've seen people discussing the problem with jobs, though. Is that we're going to get we've got discussions of like studios, for example, like generating scripts, and then hiring writers to fix those scripts. But ultimately, those writers have to basically write a whole new script because the script it generates just doesn't work as a complete thing.
Well,
but they're paying them for an editing job, not for a writing job. And
that's one of the things they've already picked up in the Writers Guild of America strike, which is going on at the moment. One of the things is they say no AI scripts in Hollywood is one of the demands of the Writers Guild to say,
and they
protect the jobs. I don't want an AI to go and write it, and I have to sit there and fix
we need
it.
a set of rules before we open Pandora's box, really, because, and it's already a bit too late because this is. We as geeks, we're better prepared because we've seen all the movies and we've read the books. We know how this goes.
It's going to go one of 2 ways.
Yeah, I'm going to start watching the Mad Max again soon to get really ready.
Probably going to veer to the dystopia stuff.
Yeah, and just think, we're at a moment of don't look up. This is where we're at. Where you've got Amazon and Google and those kind of companies desperately trying to get devices in every room in your house. Google in particular, I know people who get sent them for free. And you probably do as well, which sounds great, but it's basically just listen devices without. And then if you mix that with the Amazon one that has a screen.
Well, that's another thing.
What do you need a website for? You can just chat your shopping. So
they've just added voice search to Bard.
Yeah.
I'm sure they've got that giant database of all these kind of, and probably Amazon's doing exactly the same. Is mapping all these voice communications, just machine learning and doing it for.
But then we get into a problem with like privacy issues because as soon as your voice just turns up as an AI thing, then
again, famous case with the lady whose voice is the TikTok voice now. She was doing that, and she did that as a training for a Chinese university. And then ByteDance just come in and basically stole the language, the AI voice, and she's now across the entire internet on a purpose that she was never agreed. because that's what her voice has been used for. We're seeing it with actors at the moment. So what's his face? James Earl Jones has signed over the rights to his voice as Darth Vader in perpetuity to Disney. So now they can just use his voice whenever they want.
So if I was him, I would just then get stuffed. No.
But he's now like, I don't have to go in, I don't have to record lines anymore.
Yeah.
It's all AI generated because they've got enough of my voice on.
But I
on
think
record.
I'm arguing that like it would have been better for him to say like, no, you should hire a sound-alike and pay them.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, they should have.
Or even go so far as create a new character entirely
Yeah.
and stop using Darth Vader.
Yeah.
That would be the way to go.
That's not how things work.
Yeah.
But this is my big problem with AI is whatever model it is, it's recycling of content, and you're going to get to a beige world at some point. Where
We're there. Even 12 months ago, all of my friends in digital and web weren't using all of these tools, and now almost nobody I know isn't to some extent, and it just seems like chaos, and there's no rules. There's grifts everywhere. It's crazy, and I think we have to, like you were saying, we've got to look as kind of humans and think, how can we set some rules for just our first step into this, so that we don't all end up without jobs, even more depressed than social media, has caused a lot of us to be, and to take this as an opportunity to try and get things right rather than to cut corners. Yeah. And essentially, I know we wanted to talk about websites and AI, but essentially, there are tools, and they basically help you do all the things that we know we do now better and quicker in some cases.
And I don't see that AI being a problem for that.
Yeah, but no one's realizing that like the stuff we're doing now, because of this technology, is irrelevant tomorrow. Yeah. So why all we're doing is speeding up our own demise by kind of jumping in and but there's definitely an opportunity at this point in traditional websites and search engine optimization to take a bit of a leapfrog over anybody who isn't using this tech. You can create good enough content for the current generation of search engines to get your websites to rank better than people who aren't doing that or are doing it with humans. So, but it's going to be a short-term win.
Also, the thing that you're saying, it's going to be a beige world. I see the people who are like massively invested in this stuff. Like you see them on Twitter with their blue ticks all the time at this point, and they are
their hexagonal profile pictures.
They are they are the most tedious people in the world. They have like no actual personality. There was a time where I sort of was fairly optimistic about the human race and thinking that like everyone's got some degree of creativity, everyone's got some degree of imagination. As soon as I saw these people all the time, they're the same people who were shilling NFTs and cryptocurrency and all this sort of stuff, all the same grifts, all the same scams, and it's like, you have no personality. No. You have no independent thought in your head. How do you live like this?
It's like those kind of people, like we all did it when we were like 7, 8 or 9 years old. You go to the cinema, you watch a film, and then you become that character for 3 months because that's kind of like, I really like this person, I'm going to be that person. That's
but at least that's interesting. That's imagination. That's trying to be. That's role play. Yeah. But like these people are just like, yes, AI good. I'm going to put thing in computer and get thing. Oh look, I have picture now. That's their entire thought process.
They don't even like the Bluetooth headset in, and they all just become beige people.
It's like the image that was doing the rounds of like some guy going, oh look, see, it's generated this thing from like the Cannes Film Festival. It's made like a fake image of like a panel, and they're literally a really good like AI image. Look how good. A woman had 3 legs.
Yeah, the hands are all messed up.
Well, it was the fact that they even said like, oh, it's even not messed the hands up that much this time, which is true. But a woman has 3 legs. It's more obvious than the hands.
Yeah. I do like the idea of AI almost sort of defeating itself because people are using AI generators to put the content out, and then AI is pulling that content in. It just sort of gradually becomes an average of itself.
There's only
So,
one word.
Yes.
Average generated anymore.
I'm looking forward to
exactly,
that point where it all just eats itself, and we just go back to maybe actually human
It's like a
generated
black
content
hole.
is better.
Just at the centre is just this dense word, and it's the only thing it can output.
And that word is almost certainly going to be a slur.
Well, I've seen like people watermarking their art on Twitter and stuff like that with big butts and stuff like that, basically to basically say, stop scraping my images to put into your AI engine because you're going to end up with a big butt at the end of it.
This is where we've got like a good use of AI though is that there's a different program now which basically scrambles your images from being used by AI models. And a lot of artists have started using this and seeing like the tech bros who are absolutely obsessed, who are absolutely invested, getting so upset that they can't make images anymore off the back of it. And I'm just like, oh, what a shame.
Sorry, you can't steal somebody else's content and rework it. So one of the big YouTube channels, Corridor Digital, I don't know if you heard of them, they're a production studio, they do a kind of like a visual effects artist ranked, and they've been looking a lot at AI. They did a video which was basically rotoscoped themselves and then used AI to like paint over themselves to make an anime.
Yeah.
And there was the amount of comments on that film, that video about, well, you're stealing other people's work because you've obviously gone, because it was quite blatantly they'd sourced it from a particular anime and then they'd taken lifted the entire style. And it was kind of like, well, this isn't creative at all because all you're doing is just repurposing somebody else's work as your own content. And that's what I completely hate about the current state of AI is it's that.
It's also, I don't know if any of you have any thoughts on. I'm sure if any of you played like a game like Detroit Beyond Human, I don't know if you played that one at all.
Have you X'd Jason?
I mean, that's the fun thing about David Cage's games is that even though he made one about AI, they all feel like they're about AI because he's a terrible writer.
But the whole thing about, if AI becomes sentient, then have we got a lot to answer for when it holds us to account for how we treated the toasters? So I was, if you think of, even Red Dwarf and Silicon Heaven, is it? I think. And,
I thought you were going to go with the talkie toaster link.
Well, yeah, because that as well. But at some point, have we all exploited things that at some point become declared as life? So is that to worry about as well? So be polite to your chatbot. Yeah, just say please and thank you.
I just wish.
Don't ask to do anything crazy or weird.
This is going to sound like a complete.
Because it might come back to you on the day of AI reckoning.
This is going to sound completely off the deep end, but the entire human history has been based off exploitation, and whether it's other humans, animals, etc. Every single thing has been based on the human's capacity and skill to exploit something for personal gain, and there's thousands of examples throughout history. And is this the latest thing we're exploiting for personal gain?
Yeah.
Is now we've got computers to the stage where they're quick enough that we can exploit them to the stage of it's not just productivity anymore. We can get them to generate stuff. We can get them to do our work for us. We can sit there and laud it and then not have to put input in. But to me, that's the worst kind of scenario for humans because that's where humans get bored and they get stayed and we don't develop and we don't go further.
And we forget to remember that there are other humans around that we need to think about and make relationships with. So that's just summarising in a way. Exciting tools from a geeky point of view. But I'm pretty sure everybody, apart from the grifters, is having second thoughts about how they're using these things. And so hopefully that is the case and people are all thinking about what they're doing and like I say, back to the beginning, create good relationships with people.
Yeah, so to link it back, you're currently working with Beaver Builder and Beaver theme app. So are you using tools to assist with that work?
So Beaver Builder is a page builder. So it's a tool that you use to visually lay out things on a website. And I'm a big fan of them, and I work for them as well part-time on retainer. So you don't really need AI to help you with that process. However, working with WordPress, there are some things that are slightly beyond my abilities. where you want WordPress to do something that it doesn't naturally do. So anyone who's used WordPress knows there's a media library in the back where you upload all your images and your files and stuff. And I'm launching a website in the next month or so, Jubilee Arts Archive version 2. And we needed to categorize and tag and describe 3,000 images quickly and efficiently. And we could do it in the back end of WordPress with the media library and some add-ons, but how did you get that information out to the front? Because the media library is a back office part of WordPress. It doesn't present itself on the front as a indexable directory of media. So I just asked a tool that I've got called WP Cody, which is specially designed to write you PHP functions or JavaScript functions to help you with things in and around WordPress. And I asked it to change the permissions so that I could query the images within WordPress and the media library in the same way I can query front-end pages and posts. And it wrote me the code that I needed. It then output the images a bit too small. It outputted their thumbnails as if you would see them in the media library. I was like, I need them bigger. So I then queried the code and said, can you make it so that you output the full size, because I want to have them on screen and then be able to click them and pop that up as a modal pop-up so you see the image bigger. And it did that for me. And I was very grateful, because it probably would have took me a good day of, doubting why I'm even in this industry, all sorts of dips in confidence and existential moments and stuff like that. But it helped me to do something that was easy for it, because it knew the documentation of the whole code base, and something that I was going to really struggle with because it's very niche and not many people want to do it. So it was helpful.
But I think you still need that base level of understanding of
you need to know
the code works.
That it can do it. You need to know, if you're using prompts with things like code, you need to be able to describe the code. And when I did, I did it here actually, over 20 years ago, a course on PHP, a 6-day course on PHP programming. And the first thing the teacher of the course showed us to do was to just write down in plain English the steps that we want our code to do, e.g. get this file, break the file up, turn all the details of the file into an array, categorize them in this way, then output them, filter this out, and make it red. And so, so you need to be able to think like a programmer in order to ask something to help you to do some programming that's beyond your skill, sort of thing. If we get to the point where nobody even knows the fundamentals of what they're even trying to achieve, that's where we'll have a big problem. But I just think, I do believe in people, and I do believe that people are creative, smart, want to create things, and it's only the grifters who just want to sit back and press a button and everything's done for them and they make some dollars until the next thing comes along. So I do have faith that the creative economy will find a way through this, but it's going to be rocky, that's for sure.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you very much. And if people want to get in touch, where can they find you?
So probably on Twitter, Paul Lacey _ digital, which is DGTL. Paul Lacey _ DGTL. Paul Lacey _ DGTL. Let me know if that didn't sound right.
We'll put links somewhere.
You can also find me at paullacey.digital, which is my website, but there's not much really going on there. A couple of shoes and all that,
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Right, so back in 1969, and a copy of Marvel Superheroes presents number 18, this galactic team of heroes created by Arnold Drake and Gene Colan first burst into the universe. Over the years following, they've gone through various iterations until Marvel in 2008. What am I talking about?
It's Marvel, Keith. It's not 2008.
No.
Too many comics.
No.
Too many comics.
Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning with Paul Pelletier, I believe his name is pronounced, created what we would consider the definitive version of these heroes. They are, of course, the Guardians of the Galaxy, who in 2004, Marvel decided to take a obscure director who had previously worked with Troma, and whose biggest film...
And Suda 51.
Yes. Whose biggest film to date had been about a superhero wielding a hammer. Yep. James Gunn pulled this kind of basically D-list bunch of a-holes together to produce Marvel's 10th cinematic feature, The Guardians of the Galaxy, which was a pretty big hit, really, in terms of the Marvel content up to that point.
Introduced the cosmic half of the
MCU. Big cosmic half. It really played a big part in introducing what would go on to become Infinity War and Endgame and the whole Thanos thing. Gunn returned in 2017 with the second volume, and now he's back for his third and final volume of Guardians of the Galaxy, entitled, strangely enough, Volume 3.
The 32nd movie.
32nd, yeah. So before he heads off to the DC universe to hopefully drag that kicking and screaming into the light, we've got this new third installment of Guardians of the Galaxy, which kind of really pulls together all of the strands of what's been happening since that first film in 2014. And definitely goes all in the idea of this has always been the story of a small creature who didn't identify as a raccoon originally, but through the events of this film does decide to adopt fully the name Rocket Raccoon. And if you watch the film, you'll see how significant a moment that is for him to acknowledge that name. But what did people think of the film? I'm going to start with Sam.
I really, really loved it. I thought it was a massive return to form for Marvel. I think they've been very hit and miss since Endgame, but I thought it had a lot of heart. The action scenes were great. Had one of the best villains they've done for a while. I thought it was fantastic.
Ryan, I know you've watched it.
Yeah, I was wondering if Paul hasn't watched it, because I want to know if we need
I haven't watched it, but don't worry about spoilers at all.
Yeah.
But I've just watched the first one.
Yeah.
And generally, I'm not a massive fan of the direction that MCU has taken, but I know there are some gems in there. I mean, Keith and I actually watched Iron Man together at the cinema. When that first, I think we watched Iron Man 2 as well.
Yeah,
at the cinema as well.
I won't say we were late getting into Iron Man when we first got there. We were. It's like no.
Yeah. How many years is that? That's
2009.
Yeah.
2009. So coming up to what?
14. Well, it's 14 years this year. Yeah.
And I didn't feel a lot of the films that I've seen afterwards, which is I've only seen about 5% of the MCU.
Yeah.
I didn't have too many preconceptions from the comics or the graphic novels, but I just didn't find a lot of what I was watching very authentic. But then I've seen from time to time they've absolutely nailed it. But I haven't seen Volume 3, but don't worry about spoilers because I haven't even seen Volume 2 yet. So
I'm curious to see if Lee, have you watched Guardians of the Galaxy 3?
The only Guardians of the Galaxy I've been engaged with over the past couple of weeks is the Trailblazers of the Astral Express in Honkai Star Rail, available now on PC and mobile. Not Spawn.
So it's the first film that almost made me cry in the entire MCU. Almost cry. There's a few moments where you're like,
just let it out.
Just let it go.
You'll enjoy it so much more.
You're almost moved by Space Mario.
Yeah, almost. But me and Keith were talking about it, and it's kind of like, I think this is kind of the perfect jumping off point if you have reached MCU exhaustion. And if you don't want to carry on with the numerous over 30 movies and numerous TV series that are coming up, if you think I'm done with Marvel, I can take a break now and I can take a few years off without having to watch Marvel franchise again, this is probably the greatest way of finishing it off. It's in my top 3 MCU movies. There's the cast fantastic, the story has real emotional heart, it's done in a way that it doesn't rely on the whole MCU quippiness to a certain extent. It's still in there, but it actually allows scenes to breathe, and it allows emotional impact to happen, and it allows the characters to run the story rather than just being we need to get from A to B because that's how this movie runs, and B is the finishing point for the next movie, so that's your C point. It's kind of like they've almost gave James Gunn the freedom to sign off the MCU for his part in the way that he wanted to, and leave the characters where he wants to. It's still open, it can still carry on, but his iteration, I think they've had a fantastic 3-film arc, and there's moments in it which I'm kind of like, I'm not watching a Marvel movie anymore, we're actually watching a great movie. There's like a scene with Chris Pratt, and he actually acts his life out, which is the first time I've seen Chris Pratt do some acting for a long while. It's like, my God, he can act.
Is that the first time since Parks and Rec?
I think so. It's like, my God, he's doing some actual acting here, and like every single element of the story kind of plays off. Soundtrack is what James Gunn specialises in. I think he starts off with the soundtrack and then writes the film around it. But some of the songs are just perfect for that moment. And I think he only couldn't get one song he didn't want out of his big history of it. But again, set pieces are beautiful. We've talked about it as well. Lots of practical effects used in here. I think it's won the world record for the most practical effects in a movie. It's overtaken The Grinch.
For the prosthetics used,
for the prosthetics used, and it's kind of it's fun, but it has heart, and I think that's what Marvel has struggled with a lot after Endgame and after that whole Infinity Saga is finished. Is a lot of the movies don't have heart anymore. They're all trying to find their way. They're trying to find where they exist, and this is like the second movie in Phase 5. We had Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which I think is pretty much the complete opposite end of. This has had far too much oversight and far too much interference and no story progression, whereas this has been like, if you wanted to go and watch the 3 Guardians movies and not even interact with the rest of the MCU, you can.
Yeah, I think it's a good trilogy of films. It works as a set of 3. Works as a set of 3, particularly because James Gunn has been in control of the thing the whole way through. And I think that the worrying point we had a few years back, with some of the controversy that came around him being fired from the Marvel Universe and then being brought back, has worked in Marvel's favour for this. Because apart from, as Lee, we were talking earlier about the fact that the second half of the first film services the wider Thanos storyline that they were putting together. And if you strip that out of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and particularly 2 really just has nothing to do with anything else that's going on. And this one again jettisons that idea of being connected to the wider Marvel universe. The idea that this is Rocket's story from the first film to the third film, and his evolution of accepting,
responsibility.
And the coda that we get in the post-credits, the first post-credits thing, where Rocket really embraces the idea of, I am me, and I can do these things. And I think that speaks a lot of all of the characters within the Guardians are all in some way damaged or broken, or something's happened to them in the past to make them doubt themselves. And as a team, if they've built, what's great for me is that unlike another franchise which has the word family heavily integrated into it,
which have become superheroes, which is the complete opposite.
Guardians has embraced this idea of family really well, and the fact of what happens to Gamora through the Infinity War, and then they conveniently return a Gamora. What I liked about that is they didn't go back to status quo. That character didn't go, I'm going to end up being the same character I was. She was different. She reacted different. You could tell by the end of this film that she had changed, but she hadn't changed into the character that we'd previously seen. She had, she evolved.
There's growth. There's
genuinely
growth,
by what she'd encountered during her existence.
This is what I'd say, because obviously I famously don't like superhero media, but Guardians of the Galaxy did always appeal to me for the simple fact that it's not so much superheroes, but just space weirdos going on adventures, and I'm kind of okay with that, which is why that second half of the first movie, I utterly hate it because it's generic superhero MCU again. But the first half's really good because it's just them in a prison interacting, and then the second movie has absolutely nothing to do with the rest of the MCU. It's really good. I genuinely enjoyed that film.
I mean, even though they touch on the kind of the ego, which is one of the biggest kind of characters in Marvel.
It's still, like you said, it's got that heart to it. It's got that kind of.
But it's family again. It's the same idea of family, and I think 3 particularly does a lot of good work with that. I think in some points it's trying to do too much, because Gunn's definitely kind of gone, I've got to finish this story the way I want to tell it, and at times it kind of pushes against the edges a little bit, and you kind of think, it would have been nice. It flies by. It's a 2.5 hour movie, and I think it's one of those times where I thought maybe another 20 minutes would have been nice, just to give it a little bit more room to breathe, because things do happen at quite a clip and things move on quite fast. But I think Gunn he managed to kind of wrangle it so it doesn't fall apart like some of the movies do when you're trying to squeeze too much in. And everybody gets their moment.
Yeah, it's still got all the traditional Marvel beats, I'd say.
Yeah.
It's got those traditional Marvel things. I mean, that corridor fight scene at the end is pure Marvel, but it's done in cinema, and it's like it's a really nice kind of weird send off to the Guardians fighting as a family, because it's the last time we know that this is probably going to happen. So, and it's just done really well.
There's moments in this as well, in the fight scenes particularly, where I can really get his horror trauma feel, because you just go, some of this is really gross, and it's like, but it's joyfully gross in a way that goes.
The Orgosphere is just James Gunn, which is like this pulsating flesh planet where there's like this corporation lives on, and it's just horrible.
I think the villain as well really brings that horror element in with his face.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's a really nice kind of subtle prosthetic, but when it reaches its conclusion at the end, it's quite.
It's quite gross.
I think talking of the High Evolutionary with Yuuji, best Marvel villain for a very long time.
Yes.
Somebody you actually want to hate on screen.
Mean to cute animals, which is immediately going to make everyone hate him.
But he's not an anti-hero. He's not got any agenda out. Basically, I want to create the perfect being, and that's the entirety. And I will do that anyway. I want, and I will destroy things to start again.
Yeah, there's moments of genuine horror in his attitude towards things. I mean, and there's the sequence where Rocket loses his first family. Yeah, and just the throwaway attitude to that is pure villainy. It's not, I'm going to take over the universe. I'm wiping out half the population. It's just the pure insidious evil of that. Well, I just don't care attitude.
He never refers to Rocket as Rocket. It's always Subject 89P13, and that's kind of like this whole thing of he doesn't care about person.
But that's the other great thing of it being James Gunn as well, because if you watch the first Guardians of the Galaxy, when they're all lined up and having their scans done, one of the aliases that actually pop up on the screen is that numbering. So it ties right back. It's just really good how it all ties back to everything we've seen before. There's nothing that he kind of goes, I'll just gloss over that. It all makes sense. And even Groot. At the end,
character progression.
Yeah, because I mean, I've read a few. I subscribe to. There's a couple of different theories about why we hear a certain character speak in our language for the first time, and I've seen a few variations, and I kind of go with the side of that he still says, "I am Groot." Yeah, but because we've bonded, we hear the real words, and it's not like it's not that he speaks our language, we understand him.
It's kind of reference to that, because Rocket understands whatever he says, and the rest of the Guardians slowly pick up, and it's really referenced when Gamora rejoins the ship. It's like, I don't understand what you're saying. I don't understand. But everybody else gets the incomplete meaning of what I am Groot.
I definitely subscribe to the idea that Groot does not speak English, but we hear it because of our experience, and we
so it's like Hodor in Game of Thrones.
Kind of like, you find it.
That made me cry.
Also, that's just made me realise that both of these, like we talked about the other family franchise, realising that Vin Diesel is in fact part of both. I'd forgotten about that until you brought him up, and I was like, wait.
But I'm going to counter it. I don't think it's a Rocket film.
Really?
I think it's a Nebula movie.
Okay.
Even though she's the main plot, Rocket's the main plot, I think the entire film is focused on her growth and her development, and she's kind of like the beat, and she becomes the mother to the Guardians of the Galaxy to a certain extent. Her growth from being this daughter of Thanos and just being known as this horrible mechanical thing that just her purpose is to kill, to being the mother of the Guardians, and then being a more direct mother at the end of it with Nowhere. I think it's her story as well, and I don't think people pick up that. It's a real big focus on her story.
I think in particular as well, when there's a scene where they're kind of playing back the footage of Rocket being tortured.
Yeah.
And she's clearly very affected by it, and you can see that she's kind of
Gone through
But
the
she's
same.
had exactly the same
but she's-
procedure.
Yeah,
with
and
Emma.
she's experiencing sympathy in a way that you haven't necessarily seen her experience that so much before, and it's really nicely acted.
Yeah. And I just thought the music again was
Yeah.
the conceit that Gunn used of like the music in the first film was from the cassette that he gets given. The music in the second film is from the next mix, and that this one is
It's
like
from
he's
the
got a
Zune.
Zune, and you see it on the screen, and he scrolls through the various eras and stuff,
Yeah.
and you go, like, it's just such a brilliant way of explaining why we hear this music, and even when it's used with, and they did it a little bit in the holiday special, where music's happening in nowhere, which is now the base of the Guardians. When they play the music over, and the characters are dancing, I love it
that
when a
scene
film
was
uses
like, yeah.
music in a way that's part of the film.
Yeah.
And it's a shame, we're still not in the kind of 80s where there's a song been specifically written for the movie or whatever it is. But I'm not a huge Florence and the Machine fan, but the way that particular track was used in the film was
It felt to me
pretty
like
brilliant.
This is an invite to anybody to become part of the Guardians family. It
Yeah.
felt very much of that it's finished, but what a journey we've had together, and let's all celebrate together.
Well,
I
yeah,
think
it's,
that's
I mean, in effect, you could all go away thinking we are all guardians of the galaxy. They're all, it's all. I mean, it's that thing of like when David Hasselhoff said, we are Groot.
Yes.
It's basically the same thing. But I think even if you're divorced from the Marvel universe as a whole, as an entertaining set of 3 films, it's up there in the kind of likes of Back to the Futures. This is a set of films I could watch again and again, even if I don't watch any other Marvel movie again, and I have ones that I like.
Yeah.
But I could watch Guardians of the Galaxy as a set of 3 films and just go, yeah, this is a cool set of movies.
It helps if you watch Infinity War Endgame. Those are probably the only 2 movies that you can bother to interact with outside if you want to do the whole MCU. But the Guardians 1, 2, and 3, it's nice own little consistent thing.
Yeah, if you don't watch Infinity War and Endgame, you might get slightly confused about what's going on with Gamora.
But I think they've recapped that in the lift. So I think it's done in the film. They recap.
What's the
that's
viewing
it.
order like if you were just, because I really enjoyed the first one, and kind of the best thing I saw since Iron Man 1 in my opinion. Although I don't know if this counts as MCU, but I really enjoyed Into the Spideyverse, so I'm looking forward to the.
So I think that's
and it's more of a Sony.
That's Sony's kind of side parallel project that will work. So you could do
Yeah.
Guardians 1,
that made
Guardians
me cry
2.
as well. I cry at anything. I cried at Spartacus. So, yeah.
Do Guardians 1, Guardians 2, Infinity War, Endgame, and then into Guardians 3, and you'll be fine.
All right,
just
awesome.
do
So you don't
5.
need to do the other 30 plus movies.
Yeah.
They're all off to one side, and the numerous.
Do the
TV
holiday
series.
special as well.
Yeah.
Actually,
Okay.
would be worth doing.
Yeah, but I think, and special mention to the goodest girl, Cosmo.
Yes, I loved her so much. That sort of running joke was perfectly done. And, concluded beautifully in a completely predictable but still wonderful way.
I do love the fact that both Kraglin and Cosmo get to be fully subscribed members of the Guardians at the end as well.
It's a very nice way, and it's kind of, we don't get that often now, where things are neatly wrapped and tied up with a bow, and this is done. You don't need to carry on. It's done.
Yeah.
We don't have that with TV series because everybody's always angling for another renewal. How many TV series have been extinguished halfway through their life, and then you're just left with those ones? We've been discussing quite a lot with Final Space recently, where Olin Rogers is finishing off with a very limited edition comic book because Warner Brothers won't give him the money to do another series. TBS won't let him air the series anyway. But now he's like, well, I want to finish the story, and they're like, well, here's some very prescribed rules on how you can finish this story off. You can do, 10,000 copies
something like that.
on a graphic novel, and that's it.
Very expensive graphic novel.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't touched on the fact that the other big introduction in this film was Adam Warlock, which had been teased in the previous 2. So you have Will Poulter as Adam Warlock, which is quite nice because it ties
that guy.
It ties back into that 2008 Guardians relaunch where Adam is part of the team that Star-Lord puts together, and I think he doesn't have a lot to do. He's kind of a bit of a comic.
Again, he's got
part.
progression.
Yeah, he develops his. But I like the relationship between
Yeah.
him and his mom.
I think
Which is
the
quite
way
interesting.
they brought him in of he's being popped out of his pod early, so he's a little bit stupid.
Yeah.
Basically, he's not fully finished yet. So
Yeah.
I think that was a good way of doing it. Was kind of like he needs to do some growing up still before
Yeah.
he's.
But again,
he's
that
perfect.
theme of like he rejects his family
Yeah.
to the found family of the Guardians is quite nice, and like realizing he does the right thing in the end, which is quite nice. And then there's obviously there's the one post-credit scene, and then there's another post-credit scene at the end.
Yeah.
And it does say a certain character will return.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Which I mean it'll be okay.
Yeah.
I think it'll be okay.
I want to know who the neighbour is. That's all I want to know. It was left very open. I'm like, hang on. You know, Marvel
anybody.
always have to put a little bit of a frisson, a little bit of a vignette in at the end of
Yeah.
what we're going to do.
I don't think it's anyone. I think it's just.
It's
AI
just
next to,
it's just to wind you up.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be a Stanley AI generated version.
No,
It's
don't go there.
Mephisto.
Although I did like the fact that Marvel once again took the time to do a different Marvel Studios logo
Yeah.
that focused purely on the Guardians characters, which was quite nice. But I think if you just want a fun time out at the cinema, Guardians is definitely worth a go. You could probably go in without
What I would
too much.
caution is taking anybody probably below the age of 9.
Yeah, it's fun, but there are bits that are very much.
Yeah,
less fun.
if you're young and you've got pets, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't do it.
Yeah. If anybody is probably 9 or 10, it's probably about there. 'Cause it's a
Yeah.
12A. I mean, we get Marvel's first ever naughty word,
Yeah, which is funny.
which is the perfect moment for the film, actually,
It's
because it's
funny.
got no relevance to any of them.
Yeah.
And it's such a James Gunn thing about where he drops it in, so keep your ear out for that one.
I did think that was pretty hilarious. I think as well also what is fascinating is the progression of CGI technology.
Yeah.
Because those animals were like
Oh, God, yeah.
you just think, oh my God, I know it's CGI. It's got to be
You would
CGI
go
because
for-
there's no way they've wrangled 14 raccoons into a cage for my entertainment purposes.
Yeah.
But you just go, just the expression and the eyes.
Yeah.
You're sitting in front of a huge cinema screen,
Yeah.
presented with the eyes of a CGI generated raccoon, and you go, I'm not crying, you're crying. I'm not crying, you're crying. It's like the emotion that is now, they're able to get into this is quite phenomenal.
Even if you think about Rocket's first family, I mean, they all look like the kid from Toy Story's basement.
Yeah.
He just pulled apart and reassembled things together. He looks considerably a lot like Will Poulter, surprisingly, as well. If you think back. But yeah, even then you fall in love with those characters, and it's like in any other film these would be horrific monstrosities. But James Gunn has made a really good skill at making you love things that are grotesque.
Yeah, it is a pretty impactful scene when you kind of he turns back and stuff happened. But yeah, it's an emotional ride. It's really good. The High Evolutionary is a good introduction to the universe as well.
Such a villain, such a fantastic villain.
And I think when Marvel concentrate on things like that, like Strika has been in previous episodes, and just somebody who's just bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that really
I
works.
don't care about their motivation. I don't care if they're an anti-hero. I don't care what's caused them to be in that situation. Give me somebody I will actively want to hate at the screen. I'm going to cheer when things
They get their
happen.
comeuppance. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think if you've checked out of Phase 4, this is definitely the highlight of Phase 5 so far.
Yeah, I'd say if you wanted something that has that conclusion and you were done with Marvel, this is probably a good thing to go in and not
But I was hugely entertained. And I will continue to read the Guardians of the Galaxy comics. A new series has just started in Marvel with one of my favourite British artists, Kev Walker, on art duties. Very Western themed, styled. So I'm looking to see where that is. We've only had the first issue so
Same
far.
squad or mixed up?
Yes, basically the same as the current one. But we've got a whole big group thing happening in the Marvel Universe as well. But that's a whole different segue. But as a film, I was hugely entertained and I loved every minute of it. And I've listened to the soundtrack several times since.
It'll be on probably in Disney Plus by the time.
Yeah.
Well, the next 3 minutes.
Well, yeah. By the time you read this, it'll be on it.
As soon as it's finished at the cinema, it'll be on Disney Plus now, I think.
But
Yeah, so.
definitely worth a watch. So if you've got 2.5 hours to spare, and you can maybe squeeze in the first 2 Guardians movie, Endgame and Infinity War beforehand, then
Yeah. If you've got a spare day, just have a
Yeah.
catch up.
So it's all good.
He's put it on backwards.
My crown etiquette isn't what it used to be.
The king of cosplay is here to issue a new decree. We are doing another Poundshop Cosplay, but this one has a theme. Now you see, next month there is a movie coming out called Indiana Jones and the Something of Destiny. I can't remember. It's a commoner's film. I don't remember these things. So I thought it would be interesting if everyone who is participating in the Poundshop Cosplay could do a theme of ancient history. Now, this can be however you interpret it, as long as it is real Earth history, Keith. So it can be a historical figure from mythology. I don't care, as long as it is somewhat relevant to ancient history. Something that Indiana Jones could potentially dig up and then get crushed by a boulder in the process, if that makes sense. Is this an acceptable theme?
Can I just come as the boulder?
If you wish. That is acceptable, as long as you can make it convincing.
That is the cosplay.
That is the cosplay. Thank you. That is my decree. I look forward to seeing the results. And Keith, you need to improve your coronation skills. We will run it again in future. Thank you.
Time for our regular roundup of what's piqued our interest in recent times. So, it's traditional for the guest to go first. Paul, what
Okay.
is your one geek thing that you'd like to tell the audience about?
All right, I hope this is allowed, so you might have to edit this out so you don't get struck. But I've really been enjoying playing Breath of the Wild on CMU emulator on my PC in 4K with amazing shading effects over 60 frames per second. It's just...
Yes. I'm assuming you own your own personal copy on the Switch.
I do.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I do.
And
Yeah, I do.
That's
And the
perfectly fine,
Amiibos.
because
Yeah.
if you own your perfectly own original copy,
I owned it on the
emulating
Wii U
is
as well,
perfectly fine.
so-
It's fine.
Yeah.
Nintendo aren't going after people for that. They're going after themselves for posting footage
That's
of Tears
right.
of the
They
Kingdom.
need to take their own Twitter account down, don't they, and stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah.
So I've really enjoyed that, and it is beautiful. And maybe one day Nintendo will release some of these things on PC. You know, so it's unlikely, but you know, we do live in a universe where you can do this, and it is mind blowing, awesome.
Because Tears of the Kingdom has just dropped at the time of recording this one,
Yeah.
so is this in preparation to play Tears of the Kingdom?
I'm a bit intimidated by Tears of the Kingdom, to be honest. You know, I just see all the different things that you can do in it. It looks amazing. But this whole thing where you can combine, you know, different items to make weapons or objects, or make your own flying surfboard with fireballs coming out of it, or all these different things that I've seen, I feel like it might be a little bit too complicated for me. So what I do is I play, you know, Breath of the Wild and cheat with loads of amiibos. And the first time I played Breath of the Wild, my son was, I don't know, about 4 or 5. And he was my cook, if anyone knows what we're talking about here. So I would just go and gather all the ingredients, hand the Switch over to Theo. We're like, can you just cook a bunch of stuff and give me the Switch back in half an hour? So I've got some food to go and fight the boss with.
So it always got me with Breath of the Wild, because
Yeah.
I think everybody here has a Switch and probably a copy
Yeah.
of Breath of the Wild.
I've definitely got one.
It was
Yeah.
too daunting for me, and I just haven't had the time to go and invest as much as I want into Breath of the Wild. I can imagine it is a fantastic, immersive, brilliant game, but life being the way it is, finding time for sitting down and properly gaming on a Switch is and to be honest, if you are playing on the Switch, you'd use when it docked on the TV because that's
Yeah.
where it looks the prettiest.
Yeah.
Because the little screen, you're like, it does not really suit as a Zelda game to a certain extent because it's part of having the expansive environment, the beautiful art style, etc. So I don't know. It's one of those.
If you get all the
always-
amiibos though, you don't have to buy the actual amiibos. You can get just the little cards, and you can skip a lot of the grind work if you just want to go through the story and experience the game. And that's what I'm replaying it now. I've given myself unlimited hearts, unlimited stamina, and seeing the game I've already experienced with a bit of cheating, but now even more cheating, but just seeing it looking as it does, because my favourite game is Witcher 3, and I've been searching and searching for something post Witcher 3, struggled, can't really find anything that does it, and Zelda was the nearest, Breath of the Wild was the nearest experience I got to that after Witcher 3. So yeah, that's what I do. I just play those games on loop.
But if you're into those games and they are terrible time sinks, I'd probably recommend like Genshin Impact, which is pretty much
Right.
the Chinese version of Breath of the Wild.
Oh, okay.
On mobile.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty close in style and the way it works, etc.
Yeah.
And probably Honkai style rail.
What about Xenoblade? Is that I've got Xenoblade 2, I think. Is that a different type of game?
So
altogether?
Xenoblade is... it does have the big, expensive worlds.
Yeah. It looks beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, the developers of Xenoblade actually helped make Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Because that's kind of what they're good at doing, is like making these massive, expansive worlds work on Nintendo systems that are quite underpowered.
It's pretty amazing, yeah,
So,
they're doing that, yeah.
They've done it with all the Xenoblades, because like the original Xenoblade came out on the Wii, and they made this massive, expansive, like, gorgeous world on the Wii.
Yeah.
So, you know, they've kind of got a really good knack for doing that. So, yeah, I've not played the third Xenoblade, but I had issues with the second one. But it you may find that you enjoy it a bit more. But you know, there's definitely some shared DNA there. So
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, I think we all have that kind of game where it scratches that itch, and we all get that game itch sometime. I mean, me, it's Skies of Arcadia Legends, which nothing has ever, everything pales in comparison to that one, because that was my game at that time, and it was my comfort food. So, but yeah, I mean, Breath of the Wild, it still holds up now. I think and the art style, I think, is a massive contributor.
Yeah, but seeing it, I mean, essentially, it's the same polygons that they just. Well, I actually don't know how they've done it, but it's as if it was created like that and then descaled for the Nintendo because it had to be for the Switch or the Wii U originally. But just seeing it in what it can be reimagined now is just unbelievable. It just beats the majority of the AAA modern games at the moment on a visual basis for a game that is however many, I don't even know how many years old Breath of the Wild is, but it's
6 years.
6 years, yeah.
Yeah, and it's the one thing we always discuss about how Nintendo have this knack of going beyond the graphics and concentrating on the environment, the story, the world building and that kind of thing. And you don't need it to look like you're playing an actual human. It's perfectly fine to have a stylized art graphics. So.
That goes back to the film that we were reviewing earlier. It's such a breath of fresh air to get the story done right rather than the gimmicks and stuff. So that's been my thing the last couple of weeks.
Awesome, thank you. Sam, how about yourself? What have you been up to?
So a couple of weeks ago, I went to Manchester with a couple of friends to go to Warhammerfest, which was interesting. So Games Workshop are about to release the 10th edition of Warhammer 40,000. And for the first time as part of that, they're going to be releasing all the rules and all the data sheets as free online downloads. So you don't have to spend like 70 quid just to get the rules before you even...
No, you just have to spend
overpriced.
your entire bank account on the figures themselves.
Yes, exactly.
And the paints.
And so they were previewing the new rules at the Warhammerfest, which we did not get to try out because the queues were insanely long to get into the preview parts. and even just to get to the shop. Like we couldn't couldn't actually work out whether you were queuing to get into the shop or the people in the queue have been to the shop and are queuing to buy stuff. But there was a huge amount of queuing. So we basically ended up finding a table that had a sort of board game cafe area. We hunkered down there for most of the day and kind of went off and grabbed lunch in shifts, and played a few sort of Games Workshop board game style things, which were all very good fun. There's some incredibly good cosplay on display. Yeah, people must have just sunk a huge amount of time and effort into it, 'cause it's big Space Marine-y kind of armour. And yeah, overall it was a very good day out. I would have preferred it if there was less queuing, but there was plenty to do anyway. And yeah, quite excited to find out kind of how the new rules are going to look.
Because I know they did a lot of work on the original Warhammer, because there's Warhammer, which is like the fantasy one, and then the Warhammer 40k, which is a separate one. So I think it was called Age of Sigmar, which they basically threw away the original rule set for Warhammer, and then have done it all again since then.
Yeah, so they had the original Warhammer that got thrown away and replaced with Age of Sigmar, but they are now working on Warhammer The Old World, I think it's called.
Oh, is that so everybody
so
gets
it's-
their Age of Sigmar stuff and throws that way?
No, so
It's almost like they've got this curious rule about how to make them buy things again.
yeah, so I think the idea is it's going to sit alongside Age of Sigmar, but they're kind of using it as an excuse to re-release some of the older models and some of the sort of armies that didn't quite make it into Age of Sigmar and that sort of thing, and the general kind of lore for it as well. I think they're building on that.
Yeah. No, cool. Yeah, I always used to play Gothica, which was kind of their like spaceship battle simulator one, which never really got really popular, which really annoyed me, because it was like, this is the fun one to play. I don't want to get my tape measure out to move 3 centimeters and then work through my action sheet for 3 hours to work out how I can actually kill this bad guy.
So this is why I like D&D, because it's theatre of the mind. So therefore you don't have to worry about any of that.
Yeah. They have said as well, though, that with the new edition, the big focus on rewriting the rules has been making them simpler and kind of stripping away all, like, you almost need a degree to understand what all the different rules are just for the army you're playing, let alone the army that you're fighting and all the other armies that you might be.
See, there's an AI gap in the market.
Yeah.
Your AI companion to work out what way to play.
Yeah.
I used to play Space Hulk a lot, and well, it was when I was at school, high school. It was Hero Quest came out, and Advanced Hero Quest, and then Space Hulk, and we never as a group got much further than that, because school finished then and we went off to different places. But I used to work at a place called Way Ahead Records in Nottingham, and there was a guy who I worked with there who was a professional painter. He was making a fortune painting people's armies and stuff like that. But I know Space Hulk was very basic. It was like a 15-minute game, but it was so much fun. I still got it, unpainted.
Yeah,
I wish they were painted, because they didn't look very good. But the gene stealers and everything.
I know a few people who have, big armies that are mostly unpainted, but it's. I think that is one of the things that I like about that hobby is it's what you make of it. If you're into the gaming, you don't have
dip in and out if
to
you
paint
want.
it. Yeah, but I almost prefer the painting side of it, so I will buy stuff based on what's going to be fun to paint.
I think Warhammer are missing out on a massive market by having pre-painted figures, because I would buy them then. It's like I've got Hero Quest, so the original Hero Quest,
the original
the
non-advanced one.
Yeah. And again, but it's like they're just grey blocks of plastic. But it's like I've seen people paint these things incredibly. And I'm like, I ain't got time for that. It's like, but if you want to pay an extra 20 quid if you want to have it pre-painted for me, and I'll buy that figure.
So I used to play Star Wars X-Wing, which was the
Remember that
board
one?
game,
Yeah.
the Fantasy Flight one. I think it's owned by somebody else now. But one of the joys with that was you bought the figures; they were pre-painted and they looked pretty good as soon as you put them straight down on the playmat.
Yeah.
It's like you didn't have to spend 3.5 hours.
Well, I bought one of the McFarlane Space Marines figures.
Yes, I remember.
I think you bought it, me, rather than I bought it myself. They made what was brilliant
They
about
did
that
an
is they
unpainted
made
one,
one that was unpainted. It's like, why am I buying that one?
That was the limited edition one, and that one's sold.
And then I was like, I'll buy the figure because like he's all blue and everything's painted on, and I haven't got to do little tiny. You got to paint the thing on the arm. It's like I can't see as it is, and then you're expecting me to paint with what
I don't
literally
know,
would be a
steady enough
hair.
hand. I
It's
can't
like,
do it.
No, I can't do that. Sorry, but yeah, they're Warhammer. Coloured figures. That's a market.
Well, they're having a big issue at the moment, which is probably another reason why they're releasing everything and changing it. Is certain people have been 3D printing their own figurines rather than buying them direct from Warhammer, which of course is
Right,
very
yeah, because you
annoying.
can get
Still
like
gotta paint
fake Lego and stuff from China, can't you?
Yeah.
And stuff like
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Like really,
Warhammer Lego.
yeah.
Then you aren't going to paint them either. I'm just all for the. You ain't got to paint it.
Warhammer and Lego will never happen because that was the whole thing about Lego and violence,
Right.
which they kind of ignore now anyway.
They
because
do seem to-
Marvel stuff.
yeah.
But that was the whole reason the Halo franchise went to Mega Bloks back in the day, was
right.
because
Hmm.
Lego refused to do like a war simulator.
Which is funny because I have a Lego tall neck. So, from a series about like hunting robot dinosaurs.
Yeah. I think they might have changed their rules back in the day, but yeah. I
So,
think that-
so are you excited about Henry Cavill doing a
I'm
Warhammer?
Looking forward
TV
to that.
series?
Yeah, I love how
Yeah.
into it he is.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I love that his entire career has just become what nerdy things am I into that I can put myself in.
Yeah.
And his how to build a PC video did break the internet
Yeah.
for quite a while, mainly due to thirsty ladies. I think. more
Yeah,
than
But
anything
it's
else.
like, oh, I'm going to be Superman because
Those
I
are
really
funny
like
reactions.
Superman comics. I'm going to be Geralt because I love The Witcher, and now I'm going to do a Warhammer movie because I'm super into Warhammer.
Yeah.
Well, that was
And
half the
whatever.
reason he left The Witcher was that
Mm.
they were veering away from the books, and he was like,
Yeah.
no,
Yep.
done.
Yeah, he was that much of a nerd about it. He was just like, I refuse. I'm not being part of this if you're changing it that much.
And they've got Walmart Geralt
Yeah.
in one of the Hemsworths.
A lesser Hemsworth as well.
Dollar store cosplay Hemsworth. Anyway, yes, Sam, thank you. Keith, what about yourself? What have you been up to?
I went round the houses to find something again to pick for this. So what I ended up picking is basically an announcement trailer for the release date of a TV show, and it's the Good Omens parody from Hannah and Hindi and their Hillywood show YouTube channel. And basically, it's a 15-minute skit where basically they do a song, which is their shtick, that they do a song based on these parodies, where they play the lead two characters from Good Omens with voices that I was convinced were actually David Tennant and Michael Sheen, and I can't believe that they did the voices themselves. And it's got to be AI generated. There's some chicanery going on here, but it features a guest appearance from Neil Gaiman, whose voice is just amazing, as he basically gives them the date of when Good Omens 2 is coming to Amazon Prime. So a couple of other guest appearances from people from the show, but it's a extremely, for a parody, as most of their parodies are, extremely well made and often better than most TV shows that people would watch. But I caught it this week. I think it was released this week to advertise the release date of Good Omens 2, which I'm
not looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm curious as to how they're going to get away with doing something that Terry wasn't directly involved,
that's
which
exactly
is
my
my
problem with it.
kind of big concern. But I love the original, and I thought that they did a very good job with the first season.
Yeah.
But this parody video is quite good, and there's a behind the scenes on their YouTube channel as well. But I was hugely entertained by this, and the song's quite good.
Because quite famously, when Terry died, they crushed his hard drives. So they basically bought a steamroller and crushed all of his hard drives, so he could take his unfinished works and carry them on. And that was kind of one of his requests in the will. So I'm quite surprised that Good Omens 2 even exists as a thing, because I know it was a collaboration between Neil and Terry. So it's kind of, you're missing 50% of what made Good Omens without having been involved.
I'll give
But
it
it's
a
not
go.
like Neil Gaiman's not got another 600 different series that he could go and make a book off.
Yeah, but most of those other things that have been deen pretty trashy. Because American
What,
Gods was
you
pretty
don't
cool.
like the Lenny Henry version of Neverwhere?
Oh, no, I like the Lenny Henry version of Neverwhere. I dislike the BBC way that they did it.
where they didn't even colour grade the film after
Yeah.
recording it, and terrible pinko vision. Yeah.
But I mean, I just want to see those characters again, and we'll see how it goes. I'm happy to give it a try because they did such a good job with the first season. So
I'll reserve judgment, but I think the first series was perfectly encapsulated as a one thing, and it didn't need to have a follow-up.
But it doesn't negate from the fact that it's a parody video, which is basically a stealth announcement trailer. It's pretty funny and really good. And I do, if I've tried to find out who did is it the girls that have done the voices, or is it actually David Tennant and Michael Sheen? Because I just can't figure it out, and it really boggled my mind. And I was like, have they just dubbed this? Has it been stripped? And then they do the singing, and I'm like, no, the singing's the same voices, so how have they done this? So I was really confused. It might just be the fact I was listening to it on the bus through my headphones and I'm missing something entirely. But yeah, it's great. But just watch it because it's just really funny. It's really good. And if you want to watch the rest, because there's a Supernatural parody that I did a few years back where Sam and Dean actually make a guest appearance, and that's awesome as well. But if you've never seen anything before, I don't think they post particularly regularly. But it's the Hillywood show on YouTube if you want to find them. So it's worth a look. Their parody videos are quite exceptional, often better than like proper TV shows.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Lee, how about yourself?
So I have been, obviously with like Tears of the Kingdom coming out, like I've been like debating whether to get it and realizing that like I'm playing too many big games. And one of those big games is Like a Dragon Ishin, which is basically the Yakuza series, which is now Sega have inexplicably decided we're going to give it the name of its original Japanese name translated, which is Like a Dragon, which means that no one knows what it is anymore. But this one is a remake of a game that they released for PS3, I think it was. But unlike the other Yakuza games, it is set during samurai times.
Yeah.
So it's like the late 19th century sort of thing. So it's like after the Dutch and the Americans arrived with guns.
Yeah.
But it's like when there were still samurai hanging around, and so you are basically. There's a review that I read of it which describes it perfectly. That it is basically a Muppet version of Yakuza. So in the way that like the Muppets can go into A Christmas Carol or Treasure Island and be those characters, this is taking the cast of Yakuza and making them actual historical figures, but it's still their faces and it's still the original.
So it's like Odin Nabongu and those.
Yeah.
That area.
So it's sort of like I remember because I keep calling him Kiryu anyway. I can't remember who Kiryu actually is. But like you are basically, it is a Yakuza game, but you're a samurai. So you've got a sword, but you've also got a revolver because again, the West have arrived with guns. So it's sort of like a bit of like samurai, but a bit of Western influence as well. So like in the same way that like Sergio Leone just kept ripping off Akira Kurosawa, this is kind of like the Japanese taking all that back and going, well, we're going to steal all the Western aesthetics and put it in our samurai game. So it's a bit of both going on. And it's just a lot of fun. Again, it is just a Yakuza game, so it's got all the same usual kind of nonsense side stuff. They've somehow managed to get karaoke into samurai era Japan. So they've not managed to get the Sega Rock
outrunning in that.
No, sadly, that's the thing. I'm just like, you couldn't get outrunning. Just come up with some
They could
excuse.
have done like a carriage chase or something.
Yeah.
A couple of horses.
But yeah, it's got all that sort of usual side stuff, but it's also sort of, your very sort of serious samurai drama with like all the sort of politics going on with that. But just like the gameplay of it is really fun because it takes that kind of traditional brawler gameplay, but it gives you a sword. So you can have you can fight bare knuckle like you would normally in Yakuza, or you can pull out your sword and you pull out your gun, and there's like the wild dancer style where you can have both. So you got your gun in one hand and your sword in your other, and you're like spinning around and you're slashing people up and then firing your gun at someone else, and it's ridiculous, but it's just a lot of fun, and it's got that same level of humor. There's a whole like side quest where you have to translate a letter from someone. So basically there's a guy who's fallen in love with this woman who lives in like one of the sort of more rural areas of Japan where they have like a different dialect. and the localization on it is great because you have to basically translate Cockney. So the whole letter is just written in like Cockney slang, and you have to translate it into English, and it's like one of the greatest bits of localization I've seen in one of these games. And yeah, it's.
I always think there must be two writing teams in any kind of Yakuza game, because like you'll have the main plot line, which is always super serious, hard boiled. Usually 80s kind of like this is like a proper dark kung fu movie. You expect Beat Takeshi to turn up at any point, smoking a cigarette, wearing a suit in the background. That kind of level of like really deep level. And then all the side quests are frankly ridiculous. They're all like go and fetch a teddy, which is a hawk has stolen and put on top of a basketball court.
There's also in Yakuza 0 there's the side quest where you have to train a dominatrix to be more dominating because she's not very good at it. She's a bit shy. So that's a whole side quest.
They know their market.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's, again, talking about Yakuza 0, the whole cult. There's like this whole one where you have to go into a cult and rescue a girl. And it's basically like you end up just slapping the cult leader because he's just a big baby and he's like completely terrible at being a cult leader. Yeah,
it is just. And just them taking all of that and putting it in samurai era Japan is just a brilliant thing. And like the fact that like they've taken this game that years ago they were just like, oh, the Western audience won't understand this. You know, it's sort of samurai era. It's not. They're not going to latch onto this one. And now they've decided, no, the Western audience absolutely is going to go nuts for this because the series has blown up. And they're like, well, it's just that, but you're a samurai now. So we might as well bring it back, and I just love that they are doing that, and Sega are kind of leaning into that and recognizing the popularity of the series. That there are so many people in the West who are just quite happy to go along with this sort of ludicrous living in Japan simulator where occasionally people punch each other all the time.
Where do you start with Yakuza? What's the first game you should?
The first one.
There's so many of them, isn't there?
The first one I started with was Zero.
Start with Zero,
which is a really good one because that was
which is a newer game, is it?
Yeah. So like it was a prequel to the whole series, so it's set in the 80s, whereas the others are all contemporary.
Oh, nice.
So that one is just like it's sort of like the origins of Kiryu becoming a Yakuza and all this sort of thing. So it's a really good starting point. But all of the games are available on modern systems now because they remade the first two. But then all the others they've just sort of given a remaster.
I think they're all on Steam, I think.
On everything at this point. So I think except Switch. Switch is the only one that hasn't it? But but Zero was my starting point as well. I played a bit of like 5 before that. And that was kind of when I realised, oh no, there's more to this series than just it's a crime game.
I should start at the beginning,
But like then Zero came out, and I was like, okay, this is the point where I actually properly get into this series because it is a prequel, and you don't need to know anything. So
I'll start there then.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it is kind of like the greatest, weirdest game you can have because you can go from like a super serious plot line of I've just killed like my granny or something like that, and it's like the heart-rending scene, and in the next scene you're playing under claw machine trying to get a teddy bear.
I mean, I will say as well, Ishin is also pretty a good place to start because it is completely standalone because it's set in a different time period. I'm waiting for that to go on
sale. It's in my wish list, that one already. It really appeals to me, the feel of that game.
Talking about the weirdness of time, I saw online last week. It's kind of like talking about the weird confluence of things. There was a period in time where a samurai could send a fax to Abraham Lincoln.
Yes.
Because they're all kind of like the confluence of weirdness.
Yeah.
It's like that technology existed then.
Yeah. So, but like a Dragon Ishin, having a lot of fun with it when I'm not also playing Honkai Star Rail and other things. So. What about you, Ron?
Got to catch them all.
Yes.
So to me, I'm going musical theme because this week was the 10th anniversary release of one of, if not the greatest album of all time, which is Daft Punk's Random Access Memories, which is depressing that it's 10 years old.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I'm about to just melt into a husk at this point.
So if you don't know what Random Access Memories is, it's Daft Punk's 4th final seminal studio album. It's pretty much their magnum opus. It was kind of their culmination of the career. It was their follow-up to, I think it was Tron Legacy came out between Discovery and Random Access Memories.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, so it was kind of like the development of that style, and they interleave some of that into they interleaved a little bit of that to random access memories. But my beautiful vinyl has arrived, which I'm not opening, so I've been listening to the Spotify version, as most people do. But it's a really nice little vignette into like their recording process. They put some outtakes in there. They put some demo versions of stuff. So it includes Horizon, which was the Japanese exclusive CD release, I think, back in the time. That was a track that wasn't featured anywhere else in the world apart from Japan. Damn you, Daft. So, but they've done that. They did a demo of a song they did with Julian Casablancas, which was called Infinity Repeating, and it was kind of the last thing they ever recorded before they decided to take a break and then inevitably split up. But there is one track on there, and I haven't remembered the name yet because I've been over-listening to it too much, called Prime. It's a 2012 unfinished track. But they take the bass line from Son of Flynn off the Tron Legacy soundtrack, and by the end of it, it's pretty much like the random access memory style of music. So it's kind of such a perfect fusion of their musical taste from that electro into the orchestral works that they finished on. And Thomas Bangalter, I think, has just done a orchestral soundtrack for a movie, so that's his first thing since then. And he's moving more into the soundtrack thing. It's a bit weird, like the guy from Radiohead, I can never remember the name, who just does movie soundtracks now. And him from Slipknot.
I mean, you've also got Trent Reznor doing a lot of stuff as well.
Yeah, so those kind of things are where he's moving into doing soundtracks now and soundscapes, and he's being very orchestral with it. And it's kind of, you can see that progression from that really hard thing, if you think of Defunk and those early singles where it was purely electronic music, into Discovery, which was their start of feed of moving into music, and then random access memory. So it's just a beautiful thing to have, and it just annoys me that they don't do music anymore. It just frustrates me because, again, it's one of my perfect albums. So we're trying to think of an album that's better.
No, I'm just trying to think of like something to say about it that's like hasn't already been said, really. 'Cause it is just a really good album. I do love that sort of it came up randomly when I saw like a Reddit thread about where they posted like an old picture of Giorgio Moroder, and everyone in the comments was just quoting the Daft Punk track where he's yeah.
But I mean, again, that's one of the fantastic pieces of music, and that lift midway from the song where you have like the talk of Giorgio Moroder, and then they swap into the instrumental. I think is one of the greatest progressions of a song of all time.
Yeah,
That's Prime.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just an album which I can always go back to and I never get bored of. And every time I listen to it, there's always something new, something little hidden away. And having a new version with a little bit of extra stuff, just, again, it's interesting to watch their creative process. So there's a long piece on it called about one of the songs they do on Random Access and maybe Fragments of Time. So you hear them like go for the lyrics and change the lyrics, and how does this work? Do we need to change this line? Does this make sense? And it's their loops, the way that they bed the tracks in. It's really interesting to listen to.
Is all that stuff on the vinyl version as well?
Yes.
Is that like a 4-disc? Three. What's on the non-used side?
I don't know. I haven't opened it yet because I'm like, if I open it, then it's ruined. It's like if I leave it, it's perfect. It's like the weirdness of never read Terry Pratchett's last book. I've got a copy and it's just sat there shrink wrapped because I know if I. It's a bit different with music, but if I read that last Terry Pratchett book, then there's no more Terry Pratchett to read. So I've kind of left it unread for that reason. Of one day when I'm ready, I'll do it. But at least I know there's some unread stuff there that. There's something that I can get involved in.
That's so cool. That's really nice.
But yeah, go and listen. It's on Spotify.
Yeah.
It'll probably be on every streaming service known to man.
I have seen the 10th anniversary release on Spotify. I haven't listened to it. Like it's when I've like gone to pull tracks from random access memories for playlists.
Yeah.
And then I've seen the 10th anniversary, and it's like brought up like outtakes version or whatever. I'm just like, that's not the one I'm looking for. But thank you, Spotify.
Yeah. I mean, if you've never listened to the album, I'd probably just take yourself away, put yourself in a room, switch everything else off, turn off your phone, and just listen to it. And it's such a beautiful soundscape from start to end.
It's on Apple Music as well, for those of you that aren't Spotify like me.
I have Apple Music.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on the Geeky Brummy Show this issue. Sam, where can we find you online?
You always ask me this, and I can never remember. I think it's SD Edwards 89 on Instagram, and possibly
Dragon
Sam
Sam
89 on
Yep.
Twitter.
On
Thank you.
Keith, how about yourself? I can find you.
Mostly, if it's not Count Duckula related, it's me under the Hard Rock Hotel name. Otherwise, Wednesdays on the Geek Thing Twitter and website, doing a roundup of some of the comics that I like that you may also like.
And Lee, how about yourself?
Where can't you find me on the internet? So you can find me on YouTube at Bob the Pet Ferret, where I do videos on video games. By the time this comes out, I should have a video on A Plague Tale Requiem, possibly a video about video game censorship as well, depending on how soon I get that done. But you can I also write for Silicon Era as well, so you can probably find my words on there. You can find me on Twitter at Bob the Pet Ferret for channel stuff, and the Cheap Ferret for anything else. And I think that's mostly everything. Obviously, I'm on the Geeky Grummy site every Friday doing the games release roundup as well. So I'm talking about all the latest new releases. So there we go.
Awesome, thank you. And Paul, where can we find you online?
Yeah, so paullacey.digital, which is just a website I've got which just kind of says who I am and what I do. And there's some of my older talks and podcast episodes and stuff on there that generally range from things around WordPress in general, agency and freelancer life, and also mental health in that particular sector as such. I did some talks about that. So there's a few of those on the website. And if someone actually finds them interesting, then just Google Paul Lacey WordPress or something like that, and usually some podcasts will come up.
Awesome, thank you very much. You can find us all at Geeky Thing on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. We are on Mastodon. I don't think I've logged in since, but it's there. We're ready for when Twitter's inevitable corpse just shuffles itself into the bin, which we're all watching the slow demise of. But yeah, geekybrummy.com, and don't forget to check out Keith's pull list and these games release roundup every week. And we'll see you again soon. But for now, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye,
Now,
folks.
Keith.